Hi, I'm Dan Wigner, and this is Spirituality Step by Step. You can go see all the different spiritual practices um, available on spiritualitystepbystep.com. But for this video, the focus is frequently asked questions that I often get with the spiritual practice of centering prayer. If I do not answer your question, please write it down to me in the comments, and I will answer either in the comments or if it requires a bit of an extended discussion or description, I may do a new video. So let's get started with the most frequently asked questions that I get for spiritual direction with regard to centering prayer. First, I get the question, what if I've never done any type of contemplative or meditative practice before? First of all, go easy on yourself. Don't expect too much out of this practice until you get used to the mechanics of the practice. Additionally, be aware that you may have thoughts, feelings, memories surface that are particularly troubling. If that is the case, if that, and maybe a very common circumstance for persons with post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD, or complex post-traumatic stress disorder or CPTSD, if this happens to you, please consult with a mental health professional. If you don't know a mental health professional, your local priest, pastor, or spiritual director can recommend one to you. That's an important thing to remember. So sometimes when we get quiet, things rise up that are to be dealt with, not necessarily in a prayer context, but in a therapy context, and be open to the possibility of that. Another question I get very often is, does the prayer word in centering prayer, does it have to be only one word? And I would say no. It can be 2 or 3 words. It can be an image. But it's best to keep it short. You are using a word to draw your attention back from stray thoughts. So you're not really you're not trying to start a new train of thought. So you need something short, just something, oh, my thinking has gotten off the rails a little bit and I need to bring it back. Connected with that, I often get the question, how often should I repeat that prayer word? And I say, especially in centering prayer, this varies very widely by each participant. It also varies widely for a single participant between different sessions. Be open to however often you feel that you need to use that prayer word. But I would say that it's not a mantra. That's a different type of meditation. That's a different type of prayer. You're not saying this prayer word constantly. That's not the purpose. And even if you find that your thoughts are particularly troubled, to repeat the word over and over and over again in quick succession is not the intention of centering prayer. There are some wonderful prayers, like the Jesus prayer or the prayers that come with the rosary, where the intention is to be constantly thinking or saying specific words. That's not what centering prayer is. Now, another question that I often get is, what if I keep thinking about something and I just can't get it out of my mind? And I say that don't be too hard on yourself, especially as you're getting used to this practice. But this happens to everyone. This happens to me all the time, and I've been practicing centering prayer very consistently for well over a decade. And it's not so much that you're trying to craft a perfect centering prayer session. Don't think of the sessions of centering prayer as the main focus of it. you are setting an intention in those times. It's important for each one of us to have specific times that we set aside. But as far as how effective it is or not, God sees your effort and realizes that some prayer times are harder than others. Now, if you're particularly agitated or anxious, you're just having a hard time with this one, there is nothing at all just saying, that's just not where I'm at today. And get up and maybe use a prayer or meditative practice that's a little more active. Maybe that would fit better for the day. So it's not necessarily something to just push through all the time. Unless, of course, you're finding that this is your experience every single time in centering prayer, in which case you might actually see the possibility of using a different spiritual practice as your primary prayer practice. Closely connected, well, what if you spend the whole time just fighting with your thoughts? That does happen, but one of the ways that fighting with your thoughts becomes an issue is usually the unconscious or kind of unwritten expectation that your mind should be empty. In centering prayer, that's not the case. There are forms of meditation where you're trying to clear your mind entirely. Centering prayer is more about a realization of how much is going through your mind at any given time in trying to focus within that. So if you're having a lot of thoughts, maybe let go of the fighting of the thoughts more than the thoughts. A great question I often get is, what if I fall asleep? This will very likely happen from time to time, especially at first, especially if you're not familiar with using a prayer practice where there's a lot of stillness and silence involved. So go easy on yourself here too. Also, that is something that can creep up from time to time for anybody, and it does for me. Some things that I found to be particularly helpful for me is if I'm a little bit more tired that day, sometimes I will try to sit on the floor or an uncomfortable chair where, just that a little bit of discomfort can help me to focus, to not fully kind of relax, like say you might on a sofa or a real comfortable chair, or if you were laying in bed or something like that. So you want to stay a little bit with discomfort. Another potential way to do it is also you can just hold the fingers of your hand together with your thumb or any, of the individual fingers. And that's just enough of a outward focus, often to help you stay awake a little bit more. So experiment a little bit, but that something that would help you to be just a little less than comfortable can help you to stay awake if you find that that is something that is a problem a lot of times in centering prayer. Another big question that I have is, what if I have an insight, experience, or vision during centering prayer? A mystical experience. If so, thank God for it. You might need to even write down a few details, talk to your spiritual director about that experience. But as far as centering prayer is concerned, try not to dwell on it too much. Mystical experiences are not the goal of centering prayer. They're nice, but the main aim of centering prayer is a lifestyle that is more, quote, quietly focused on God and being open to the spiritual in everyday life. It's really a subtle calming effect that you'll see in your life over time. And those around you will probably notice it far more than you do. So if you have an mystical experience, neat. If you don't have a mystical experience, that wasn't the goal of it. Another question is, what if I don't experience a sense of stillness or peace or calm during that centering prayer practice, that centering prayer session? I just talked about that that's kind of the goal. But that sense of peace or stillness or calm is actually not the goal of the centering prayer session. It's the session for that day, the sessions at regular times are building a sense of stillness or calm that you take into the rest of your daily life. So an individual session may not have all that much of a sense of calm or peace, but over time, the point is to have more calm and peace as you go throughout your day. And one last thing kind of connected to that, maybe my most common question is, what if I feel like I'm not doing anything? Many prayers from the Christian prayers and practices from the Christian contemplative tradition are about sitting still, being quiet, not doing. So in a really real way, if you feel like you're not doing anything, that's the point. Centering prayer is about being. It helps us to be in the presence of God, not always to do. So if you feel like you're not doing anything, well, you did it. And if it feels a little uncomfortable, just to be bored for a little bit, to not have something to do, to not be rushing to the very next moment, then that's some really important information in and of itself. Okay, now those are the most frequently asked questions that I've gotten in spiritual direction sessions, for retreats, workshops, anytime I teach or facilitate centering prayer. Please write in the comments your own questions. I will read those. I would love to answer them, again, in the comments, perhaps, or maybe as a different video. So let's get to praying.